Welcome to Satsang Conversations, where we journey across the world to the serene and sacred spaces of BAPS Mandirs. This podcast is your gateway to exploring profound spiritual lessons that echo through time, yet remain incredibly relevant to our everyday lives. Each episode brings heartfelt discussions, wisdom, and insights that help us navigate the challenges of modern life with a deeper sense of peace, purpose, and connection. So whether you're seeking inspiration, solace, or a spark to light up your spiritual path, join us as we dive into conversations that uplift the soul and enrich the heart. This week, we join the sadhus at the BAPS Hindu Mandir in Abu Dhabi. The Vachanamrut that we're going to read is Gadhada section 1, number 70. And for anybody who wants to follow along, wherever you're listening, you can also follow along on the Vachanamrut study app or online at anirdesh.com. But here in the English Vachanamrut, section 1, number 70, the title is Kakabhai's question. And I think it's really interesting, and we'll get to that in a little bit when we get to that question. But it's a wonderful example of the same sort of environment that we're enjoying here is actually a creation and a fruit of the environment that Bhagwan Swaminarayan created 200 years ago. An environment in where people from different backgrounds and different upbringings, we all grew up in the UK, I grew up in the US, Nityanand Swami Darshan, you grew up in India, and yet we can all sit here and have a meaningful conversation openly about something that we can all grow from. And it's a direct result, as we'll see, of the kind of culture that Maharaj inculcated from that time. And it's interesting to me also because this Vachanamrut, the one that we're going to talk about today, happens on Chaitra Sud Punam, almost exactly 200 and some 5 years ago, right? It's actually 29th March, 1820. We're sitting at the end of March here, and it's almost exactly 205 years to the day where Maharaj is talking about this Vachanamrut. Shriji Maharaj is seated in Gadhada, dressed in all white clothes, and he's turning a rosary. And the whole sabha's there, there's a normal thing that's going on. In the middle of it, Shriji Maharaj opens up and he says, why don't all of you ask each other questions? And he starts by saying that senior Paramahansas should ask each other questions. But then if any other devotee would like to participate, they can ask too. And it's something that Param Tattva Swami referred to in the first episode of these Satsang Conversations about how there's this very inclusive way that Maharaj does the transfer of knowledge, taking kind of that Socratic method of saying, if we ask questions and if we have a curiosity for spirituality, as opposed to having spirituality that's enforced upon us, it really forms a way for us to kind of get involved. And so Maharaj does that here, and he opens those questions up. And the first person that's noted here for asking a question is Kakabhai, who's referred to in the Vachanamrut as a kind of senior landholder within the community. But still, even at a senior point of economic status, maybe, it's a time in India when they would not have studied Sanskrit scripture. So this is not somebody who has studied the Bhagavad and memorized the Gita and knows the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And he's not someone, interestingly enough, as we all know, the Vachanamrut is the first vernacular scripture in Gujarati in the history of India, right? So for these people who are in Gujarat, there's no access to a vernacular scripture. And because the Vachanamrut's not even printed yet, right? So for them, there's no access at all to scripture. For them, it's all about what they do personally in their own spiritual kind of praxis. And within that, Kakabhai comes up with this question, and he ends up asking Nityanand Swami this question. And to me, that itself is a wonderful thing. But let me take attention straight to the Vachanamrut and get to the question here. Thereupon Kakabhai, a devotee from the village of Rojka, asked Nityanand Swami, deep within one's heart, something beckons one to indulge in the Vishays, while something else dissuades one from indulging in them, saying no. What is it that says no, and what is it that says yes? Nityanand Swami replied, It is the jiv that says no and the mind that says yes. And it's really cool because Nityanand Swami answers in a sentence. Swami, like, it's, you could, I think, the precision of clarity of thought is represented by how few words you use, right?
Yeah.
Nityanand Swami comes in, oh, easy question. Here's my sentence. And to me, that's really interesting because the question is coming from Kakabhai and it's going to the most learned sadhu, right?
Yes. Bhagwan Swaminarayan, yes. So I would like to add a point here, as you mentioned earlier, that this is really something unique about Vachanamrut and Swaminarayan Sampradaya altogether, that the smallest of a person who hasn't had any kind of formal education in any of our scriptures, leave alone Sanskrit, I don't think he had a better education of Gujarati even, but still he could ask someone who is so much learned, like a person like Nityanand Swami, who could be one of the most learned sadhu of Swaminarayan Sampradaya. So if you look at the life of Nityanand Swami, he has studied all the scriptures, right from the Ved to Bhagavad Gita, to Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Puran, all the Purans, Upanishads. He has studied them all. Not only studied them, but he has defended Swaminarayan Sampradaya whenever there was a need for the defending. Be it Junagadh, be it Umret, be it Vadodara or Ahmedabad. He has participated into Shastrarth. That means discussion of scriptures. Debate, yeah, exactly.
And it was funny because he used to go to these debates with like many carts or something like that.
7 carts, exactly. So Sayaji Rao Gaikwad was knowing about Nityanand Swami and how scholar he was. So Sayaji Rao Gaikwad told his scholars, what about Nityanand Swami is there for the debate? I know none of you would be able to stand before Nityanand Swami. What would you do? So they had the answer for this as well. They told, Nityanand Swami is not going to be part of this debate. And Nityanand Swami right now, he's in Vadodara. So of course, there is no way that he'll be participating into the debate in Ahmedabad. So Sayaji Rao Gaikwad came to know about the ill intentions of these scholars. Sayaji Rao Gaikwad told them, okay, fine, no problem, you can go. But there's a condition. If you go there, if you lose, I'll stop all the payments or all the salaries that I give you. The term for that is Varshasan. That the salary, the annual salary that I give you, I'll stop them if you lose there. Those scholars said, no, fine, we're fine with that, because we know Nityanand Swami is not there, then we are the winners. Same time, Sayaji Rao Gaikwad sent one of his messengers to Nityanand Swami and told him, go participate in the debate. I will write to the Acharya of Ahmedabad that he should be allowed to participate into this debate. And this is the time when Nityanand Swami went with 7 carts of pustaks, with 7 carts of scriptures with him. And he went there, he participated in the debate, and he defended Swaminarayan Sampradaya. This is who Nityanand Swami was. And now Kakabhai is asking something to a scholar of this level.
It's like somebody walking down the street having instant access to the specialist or the master of the subject. And it's interesting, I didn't know, like Sayaji Gaikwad as a king is aware of Nityanand Swami. Like that, to me, is something unique, right? Like it's one thing for us within the sampradaya or within an organization to say that somebody's knowledgeable or something, but like they have at that time, Gujarat itself is not a political unit. There's different kingdoms, and cross kingdoms, he has fame, right? Yes. Outside of the sampradaya.
Yes.
So Nityanand Swami gives this answer in a sentence, simple statement of fact. It's this belief that the Atma is always pure, it's eternal, and it is unperturbed, it's not distracted or disturbed or desirous of these things. And the Man, which is itself made up of the Mayic matter, would naturally have an inclination towards Maya. And then Maharaj has something else in mind though. So Shriji Maharaj then said, allow me to answer that question. From the very day we began to understand and realized who our parents were, they have indoctrinated into us the following. This is your mother and this is your father. This is your paternal uncle and this is your brother. This is your maternal uncle and this is your sister. This is your maternal aunt and this is your paternal aunt. This is your mother's sister and this is your buffalo. This is your cow and this is your house. These are your clothes and this is your house. This is your mansion. This is your farm and these are your ornaments, and so on. These words of kusangis have been imprinted in the mind. So Maharaj is setting this up to say, hold on, let me give you a context before I get to the answer. You're living within these words of kusang. He gives an example of basically of embroidering glass onto cloth. It's a wonderful example, but for the benefit of time, I'm going to skip on. And then he says, then after the person enters satsang, the satsang fellowship, the sant talks about the glory of God, denounces the vishays, and also explains that the world is perishable. Thereby, the words and the sight of the sant dwell in the person's mind. Analogously, then, there are two armies facing each other. So, he kind of gives a different answer here, right?
Yes.
He's saying that the Atma and the Man, as Nityanand Swami has said it, may be true, but he answers it with context. He doesn't say Nityanand Swami is wrong.
Yes.
So because Maharaj did not say Nityanand Swami is wrong, I'm not going to say Nityanand Swami is wrong. And when I travel, I don't have 7 carts of books behind me, so I'm not going to claim the same amount of intelligence, right? And so he's not wrong, but I think what Maharaj is putting forth, if I'm correct, is that Shriji Maharaj is trying to say that there is a different approach here that can be taken. Ultimately and ontologically, the Atma is separate. But under ignorance, the Atma lives inside of the body, understanding itself to be the body, right? There's this false identity that's created. And for people living within that false identity, there's a different answer, right? So until I achieve the spiritual state where I can realize that the Atma and the body are different, until I achieve that state, I'm living in a state where my mind and myself feel to be one. And so Kakabhai is asking a question from that state. So Maharaj meets him at his level. And I think that is something I find to be very wonderful about the way Maharaj approaches enlightenment and approaches satsang, right? Is to say, I'm not going to just dictate to you, and if you get it, you get it, and otherwise, too bad. Like I did my part. He comes down to our level to understand the question from our level and then answer in a way that we can relate to and that can be prescriptive for us, right? And then he gives this answer.
Just I would like to add here one point here. As you said that, yes, Maharaj, we can see Maharaj's approach like this throughout the Vachanamrut. Trying to explain to the people coming at their level. For example, if you say in one of the Vachanamrutas when Maharaj is explaining about the Swarup of Atma, how is Atma? He could have gone into scripture descriptions that Atma is Satchidanand, blah, 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 this, all that. From Bhagavad Gita, this, Upanishad has told that, Brahma Sutra has told this. But he knew, Maharaj, that in front of him is the audience of Kathi Darbar. In front of him are the farmers sitting. So he told, Atma barchini ani jevo tikho che. Actually, Maharaj was trying to explain that Atma is finite. It's like an atom.
It's very small.
Very small, yeah. Yes. But then, how would he describe very small? So he gives an example of a very sharp knife. Barchi. Barchini ani jevo tikho. So as
the tip of
a blade, how sharp it is and how tiny it is.
You can't measure it in millimeters.
Yes.
Right? It's
similarly
like
is the size and the proportion of Atma. Yeah. So you see, this is how he's relating.
Even the relationship between the Jiv and the Man.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
In Antya 6, where if you put milk and water into a pot and you heat it up, the water boils to save the milk. So Maharaj goes, the mind only does what the Jiv wants. Right? They're aligned. Again, from this kind of perspective. And what's interesting is, see, when we say these numbers, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, the other beautiful thing about scriptural knowledge, Sanatan Dharma as well, and also in the way that we understand and talk about it, like, Sanatan Dharma has had thousands of years to be lost. Right? Every generation and every person has the opportunity to forego these ideas. Right? To say, not relevant, not true, my life does not line up with what this guy's teaching, so I don't believe it. Yeah, it's not applicable. So you give up on it. And Sanatan Dharma has had millennia to lose itself. and yet it sustains, which means there's got to be some morsel of identity that people, like when people hear these thoughts or knowledges, there's something that resonates and that allows them to want to keep it on, right? And similarly, in the way that it's presented and taught. So Shriji Maharaj, Bhagwan Swaminarayan speaking here, like the reason I feel like I have an easier time believing him and having faith is like there is a sense of stability and consistency. When we say that Gadhada section 3, number 6, we're talking about almost a decade later, right? This is 1820. Gadhada section 3, number 6 is, is 1830s. More than a decade later, he's driving home the same point, that the jiva and the mind, under the condition of ignorance, act as friends and do not act in a way that enlightens, without actual purpose and effort, that is not broken. So again, another example, Amli no kachiko. If you have a tamarind seed, you take a tamarind fruit, he gives this example that the soul, the mind and the body, specifically the mind, the antakaran and the jiv, are tied to each other like the peel or the skin of a tamarind fruit.
Yeah, the karan sharir and the causal body.
Yeah, if I try to take it apart with my nail, it just doesn't come apart. It's really sticky and bonded. But if I put the fire of knowledge to it, and then the top layer just skins off, like it just flakes off. So all these really practical examples, like I said, the one here about the sewing, where you are tied with ignorance by these words that sew the ignorance onto yourself, the same with this piece of glass is sewed onto the fabric. So you're absolutely right. Maharaj has this tradition of being relatable. Here again, he's saying that there's this group of people, and in this case, it happens to be family, mom and dad, who are giving you the words of kusangis. And at first brush, some people might take that to be like, oh, family's kusang. So everyone should become sadhus. And we should all give up on this all and then. But I don't think that's at all what is meant here, right? The idea here is to say that, I think what it means is that even the people that love us the most, and equally we're somebody's family, so people that we love the most, if we are not careful about aligning ourselves with the truth, with Sat and not Asat, then we can unintentionally, with the best of intentions, set up people to fail. Right? The definition of kusang is, according to this Vachanamrut, the definition of kusang seems to be a person who propagates asat, right? Who indoctrinates a sense of reality, a paradigm that is separate from reality. And sometimes that can happen unintentionally, right? It's not something that we do purposefully, but we may end up doing that to somebody, wishing for their good, and somebody may do that to us. And I think the example of the family just drives that home, that it's not about being evil and it's not about being purposefully trying to ruin somebody. I don't think the word kusangi here is meant to be the equivalent of an evil person.
So what's quite interesting, so if you look at it from what we've been taught from a Sanatana Dharma perspective, we are told that we have 4 goals: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And so there's nothing wrong with acquiring wealth. There's nothing wrong with, trying to be ambitious. And if we look at what our parents, we've all gone through this experience, our parents want to really inspire us, to teach us to be the best, to study hard. And then they go further to explain, look, these are your pens, your pencil case, your books, look after them. Why did you lose them? So we're taught that these words are there to help us and to give a springboard for us to progress. And I find that's really interesting because ultimately, though, to your point, Swami, their best intentions are to make sure that we are well looked after, fundamentally, we will be building within our mindset how we get attached to things that are perishable, how we then eventually aspire to attain things that ultimately, from a material perspective, doesn't really give us happiness. And that false sense of security is then what's going to get drummed into our mindset. And so then we spend the next 30, 40, 50 years running into this rat race of trying to achieve something, which fundamentally takes us away from fundamentally being who we are, Sat Chit Anand, truly happy within, and more importantly, which is the fundamental crux, being devoted to Bhagwan. So I think that's the separation that we need to maybe try and understand. So on one side, the goals that are religion
They're
teach
valid
us.
goals, but they have a perspective and a timeline.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the other way of looking at it, if I and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but fundamentally what it seems like is we all tend to guide each other. And I don't mean this because I don't want to make it about, what somebody else does to us. I think it's equally each of us doing it to ourselves and to others. But what we forget is we do all of those calculations on a very small time scale. Like we have a very limited worldview. So it's like you said, dharma, arth, kam, moksha, all four purusharths are valid. They're great, but each of them has a different timeline and each of them has a role to play in a greater purpose. Very famously, the way we've always understood dharma, arth, kam, and moksha is to say dharma is the foundation. It's the righteous conduct. It is the principles and the value system that should inform everything we do. And based on that dharma with righteous principles, you gain the means, which is artha, and what we simply translate as wealth, but really it's means. You gain the means to then fulfill kama, which are your ichhas, your desires and necessities. I would not just say desires, but also your necessities. And you do all of that to achieve a place of balance from which you can then focus, because you've done all of this righteously on the foundation of dharma, to attain moksha. So each of them has a purpose to pay, but the ultimate purpose is moksha. And so it's like, for me, I read that as, yes, a kind of linear progression of one leading to the other, but I also see that on a time scale. That what ends up happening is it's like, okay, look, I have this person I'm responsible for. And this person is asking me career advice. So I have a worldview of plus 10 years or plus 20 years max. I mean, if I have that, it's like a blessing, right? But maximum like plus 10 years. And so with the best information I have, Vishal's in the econ market, so he goes online and he looks up what the latest business news is about each industry, and then he says, look, beta, you have to study this and do this because I guarantee you 5 years from now, AI is going to be doing this, this, and this, as an example. So we have that perspective, we have a timeline in mind, and we can speak on that. The thing that is really hard for us to do, because of the way we program ourselves, is to think of a greater timeline. And because of that lack of perspective, we're not able to speak both in the short term and long term. And there is somebody who can do that. And that is a enlightened person, a satpurush or a sant, which is what Shriji Maharaj basically refers to, saying, but when you come to satsang, the sant starts telling you, look, there's this thing called God, by the way, in case you didn't wake up to it, and there's this thing called eternity, and you are the Atma, and these things that you keep relying on are all transient, and they cannot be the foundations of an eternal peace. So he adds that perspective. And that's what I think is the magic of the Satpurush, where in Bhagwan Swami Maharaj today, some kid can write a letter and say, what should I study? And the answer he will get will be an answer that solves his question in two timelines, in the short term and then over the long term. In Pramukh Swami Maharaj's time, that famous case where, somebody wrote him a letter to say, we don't have water in our village and I'm really trying to get a hand pump installed. And the guy's handwriting was so poor that nobody could understand it. But just off of the postage stamp, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, looking at the short-term timeline of this world, takes equal interest to say, hey, Swami, it's your area. Go find out who this is. Get the hand pump installed. And that same person then is also taken care of on the greater time scale, because then Pramukh Swami Maharaj and that sadhu is going to tell him, hey, you should consider giving up some of your vices and you should consider, this, that, and the other thing. So you get this mentorship that is built off of a greater timeline. Whereas sometimes we only focus on the short term. And I think that's how we fall into the trap of being kusangis, right?
I think Maharaj wanted to emphasize that there is an ultimate truth beyond this, beyond your ecosystem, beyond your understanding. And it is the same that after 30 years, we have a limited horizon which we can see. Maharaj knows that what is the reality, what is the truth, sat, asat. So I think Maharaj wanted to emphasize, and that's why he gave the best relevant example which we can correlate in our daily life. Yes, this is my ecosystem. But this is not the truth. Truth is something else. So that gives us the idea, thought to think upon.
So Maharaj has given this example in Vachanamrut, though he is talking in a different context. But even we can relate that example here, that when some blind man goes to an elephant and then touches just the feet of the elephant, then he thinks that elephant is like a pole. If someone touches the tail of an elephant, he thinks that elephant is like a rope. If someone touches the tusk of the elephant, he thinks that, oh, elephant is something very sharp and is cone-like something. They don't have the clear picture, or the whole picture rather, of what an elephant looks like. So they can only narrate limitedly what an elephant is because they have a limited experience. Similarly, as Aksharati Swami mentioned, that's why Maharaj is bringing us to Satpurush, that who can see far and beyond, in time and space, who can look into eternity. And that's why he can guide us, because we have a very limited perspective of time. Like he said that we may be able to guide someone who seeks for a career advice just for 10 or 10 years maybe. But when someone approaches Satpurush, maybe for this some worldly advice or advice on spirituality, then Satpurush can guide him because he can see in the future, he can see in the eternity. That's why, yeah.
But then that also means you need to have a certain fundamental amount of faith in the Satpurush.
Yes.
Okay? Because look, ultimately, my day-to-day routine is living in this worldly life, getting up, going out to work, paying my bills, etc., etc. And we are now taking advice from a renunciate who we really have to believe and have faith that he is omniscient and understands and is able to give us that guidance.
And I think the interesting thing also is that we're not left to ourselves about it, in the sense that because Sanatana Dharma realizes the importance of having a mentor and realizes the importance that the mentor you choose will create who you are. Fully realizes that, right? Just like in business. If you pick somebody to be your financial mentor, you will choose stocks the way they choose stocks. You will make business decisions the way they make business decisions. If you're not careful, if you're not aware of your self-identity, you may also just take on their personality and you start running meetings the way that they run meetings, right? Like, it happens to the best of people. Your mentors, if they're looked at with such strength, really can have a very lasting and impactful kind of presence in your life. And so Sanatana Dharma realizes that. And so interestingly enough, across time, across all the different scriptures, there's been a very concerted effort to define the qualities of such a person, so that it doesn't have to feel or be just a blind leap. There's going to be a point at which, you have to take a leap, but it can be an informed leap, right? And so, for example, just in the Vachanamrut itself, Pratham 67, it'll say, look, a person who has no worldly obsessions, who despite having everything desires nothing, right? Who only is focused on attaining the perpetual happiness and not short-term happiness. So those are in Pratham 67. You go to Pratham 54, and it says a person who practices dharma and righteousness fully, who lives according to the knowledge of the Atma and not as the body, who himself is fully devoted to God, and who has Vairagya, and so meaning a lack of, again, obsession with worldly desires or consumptions. You go to Pratham 27, and it says that, listen, this is a person who is humble beyond humble, because having as much power as he has, he tolerates the insults of the simplest of people. If there's somebody it's like, imagine a beggar walking up to a king and slapping the king, and the king does nothing. Like, if there's a power differential, a power dynamic of that large amount, right? Something like Foucault would say is impossible to maintain. Like, that sort of power difference is there, and yet the person in power just tolerates it. That person is something unique, is something different. That's true greatness. So in this way, the Shastras define these qualities that help you highlight, who this person might be. And then as you live with them or you experience them directly, if you're not fortunate enough to experience them directly, then you look at their life stories and you look at the people that they have trained and also the people who they've idealized. So their gurus. Nityanand Swami famously says this in his Vatos, that if you want to measure a guru, look at his guru, look at his shishyas, and look at his actions. So like this, there's lots of heuristics you can use to kind of, find your space. For me, like something that's also always carried with me is personal experience. And I've been fortunate in my life where I've been able to have that access to a guru. I understand not everybody may feel they've had that, but that doesn't mean you can't have it through these other means. But for me personally, it's like when we were in Delhi about 2 years ago with Mahant Swami Maharaj, and Mahant Swami Maharaj was having lunch. Vinay Priya Swami was next to him, giving him items into his pattar. And Mahant Swami Maharaj is somebody who is the most particular about any vow he takes or any decision he's made. There's a real integrity to his word, because if he says something, he will do it. And so for years, he's had this thing about chewing food 32 times. And every bite of food you take, you should chew 32 times. Such a small thing, right? Which doctors tell everybody. And I mean, clearly people like me don't listen. But he's really got integrity about it. So he was having these like boiled mung or mung beans. And so he's having this boiled food, which you or I would be able to do 5 bites at the most. Like after that, there's no point in me chewing now. But he was chewing 32 times. So we're going through this meal, and in between, he's like, he's kind of sighing and he's yawning. And so I'm thinking like, he's bored. He's bored of eating. And for me, that is something I cannot imagine. Boredom in eating. I cannot be happy with the food, but that's not boredom. And I could be really enjoying it, and that's not bored. There's no such thing as being bored of food. And so I jokingly said to Vinay Priya Swami, who prepared the food, because, we studied together in Saharanpur. So I said, Vinay Priya Swami, like, if you make something worthwhile, then Mahant Swami wouldn't be yawning. He wouldn't be bored. And Mahant Swami Maharaj, it's just the 3 of us there. And Mahant Swami Maharaj, and maybe there's somebody like in the distant corner of the room, but Mahant Swami Maharaj turned to me and he goes, no, he'd make anything I ask. I just don't want anything. And like, that is such a simple statement, but is at the heart of why what Maharaj is saying here is relevant. Why does the Sant not feed us ignorance? Because he has no reason to feed us ignorance. The rest of us, we have so many other ulterior motives, desires, and ambitions that we will trick ourselves because we want to fulfill those, and we will unintentionally guide others to hold the same ambitions. Darshan Bhai was saying to me once, Nityanand Swami's Vat really resonates with him, right? Nityanand Swami goes, because a father has the love for the world, he will inspire the same love in his child. And it's true. It's because we have all these ulterior motives that we further those motives into the people that we know, right? And it's out of good intention. Like, hey man, I think this will make me happy or rich, so you should do the same. But then there's somebody who has none of those ulterior motives, who does not even desire anything to eat, just takes what he's given and digests it as a matter of routine, right? How would he ever promote taste within me? How could he ever take me down that path of false consumption or making my happiness or my identity be based on something as temporary and fleeting as a meal? So that, I think, like solidifies what Maharaj is saying here, that there is a group of people, maybe even well-intentioned, who can unintentionally further this level of ignorance. And that can happen through our music. It can happen through anything that promotes these words. And then there's another person, the sadhu, who teaches you and reminds you constantly of these things. And just in the last episode of Satsang Conversations, right, we had Bhaktivedanta Swami talking about Pratham 16 and Sat and Asat, about how this real clear line of what is permanent and what is transient. We don't believe that things don't exist. We just believe that they have a temporal quality that separates them in priority to things that are more permanent. And the things that are permanent should be the foundation of our happiness. So in that line, Shriji Maharaj says, that's who's battling inside. Kakabhai is asking, to remind after our conversation where we are, Kakabhai is asking, there's one voice that's telling me, go ahead and consume. And I'm sure a lot of economists would be happy with that, because we need consumption to build the world's engine.
Well, limited resources, but yeah.
So it's like we need to go for it. And then there's another voice that's saying, no, look, it's okay. Like, you don't need to consume. You can be happy with who you are and find other means of adding value and finding joy. And who is each? And here the answer Shriji Maharaj is giving is saying that there's one voice that is built into this false identity, and there's another voice that is not. And now he's bringing that fight home. They're both in the mind.
I just remember about this famous discussion which we always quote in our satsang. When Dr. Swami was being asked that what made you decide this to become a sadhu, or living this bright career in those days, right? And how could you, even a person who has studied science, who was a doctor,
and MBBS in the 50s and 60s,
right?
Yeah.
And the answer was very, very simple but very firm. He said, I consider Yogiji Maharaj as a Sacha Bola. Right? So he had that faith, and look at now.
A faith in honesty.
So look at now his position, his sadhana, his life. It is in front of our life, right? We have seen it. And what he has achieved by believing by believing in Yogiji Maharaj, that in Yogiji Maharaj's honesty.
It's a path with firm results.
Yeah. Proven results.
Proven results.
Very true. So Shriji Maharaj is setting up this situation where there's a mental battle and there's two armies. And so in describing that, Shriji Maharaj says, in the same way in the person's antakaran, which is our mind, they're the forms of the kusangi standing armed with their weapons, the panchvishays, as well as the form of the sant standing armed with the weapons in the form of words, such as God is satya, the world is perishable, and the vishays are false. A mutual conflict thus exists between these two sets of words. When the force of the kusangis prevail, a desire to indulge in the vishays arise. This is the direct answer. When the force of the sant prevails, the desire to indulge in the vishays disappears. In this way, there's a conflict within the antakaran. Right? This is what Shriji Maharaj is giving as the direct answer. Now, at the end of this, Kakabhai, and he goes on to reference a couple of things, and then Kakabhai asks him, he goes, but how do I make sure that the sant wins? And Shriji Maharaj replies, he says, the kusangis residing within and those residing externally are both one. Also, the sant residing within and the one residing externally are both one. Now, the force of the internal kusangis increases with the nurturing of the external kusangis. In the same way, the force of the sant within increases with the nurturing of the sant residing externally. So this is, he's saying that what we consume will build us. Then Kakabhai goes, yeah, but okay, so this fight's going on. But what if, like, one guy, the guy who, like, wins the battle, whose sant side always wins, I get it, like, he's sorted. But the guy who's kind of fleeting, sometimes the sadhu wins, sometimes the vishays win, sometimes the sadhus win,
Still in the battle.
He's still in the
Still in
battle.
the process, yes.
What happens to him? And Shriji Maharaj, to me, I think, this is where I think Maharaj just wins me over. Like, Shriji Maharaj says, if in the process of such a fighting, he wins, then all is well and good. But if while fighting, he does not give in to his opponents, despite their attempts, and if he were to die at that time, would his master not be aware of his valiant efforts? Does the king not know the battle of the soldier? And so he says, in the same way, God is sure to help such a person, as you have described. He would believe this person is faced with the overwhelming force of fluctuating thoughts, yet he is still putting up a gallant fight. Therefore, he deserves to be congratulated. Realizing this, God does help him. For this reason, then, one should remain carefree. And to be honest, I like the Gujarati word better. It's also there in Hindi and in Urdu, in other words, befikar. It's such a more like poetic word and has such a depth of meaning. Befikar. There's like a carefreeness, a carelessness that comes with it. But here, remain carefree and not worry in the least. One should continue to worship God in the same fashion, keep the sant predominant, and stay away from the kusangis. Shriji Maharaj thus replied in a joyful manner. And from the Vachanamrut, I think I will stop here because I think there's a lot there that we can all kind of discuss and consider in our discussion. Because to me, I'll break this down into 6 parts. They're not distinct ideas; they kind of relate to each other, but just to kind of help us have a notion of what we're talking about. Number 1, Shriji Maharaj says there's 2 armies, and the armies are of knowledge and ignorance, and the weapons of those armies are words and deeds. Right? So he's defining very clearly here those 2 voices. This is not an angel-demon situation. This is not so it's not divine inspired or a divine test sort of situation. This is not a Jivan Mun situation. This is a knowledge and ignorance situation. And the knowledge and the ignorance, the Sat and the Asat, as supported by words and deeds, that's the fight. Number 1. Number 2, he says, what you consume externally feeds the army inside. Point 2. Point 3, therefore, choose the Sant, choose Satsang, which means what? You have a choice. Make sure you choose what you consume because it feeds the army. Number 4, if you choose the Sant, victory is yours. Your victory is guaranteed. So then, number 5, don't give up the fight. Which is interesting because what that tells us is, as long as you're fighting, you're winning. And then number 6, with that guarantee, be carefree. These are the 6 points as I see them. But the coolest thing about all 6 of these points to me, really, is that last sentence. The Paramahansa write down that Maharaj answered this joyously. And that to me is really meaningful. This is not a teacher dealing with belligerent students who caves. Right? Like, oh my God, okay, fine. Right? This is not a parent with a toddler who is in a terrible 3s and will not listen. And so the parent is like, okay, fine, whatever you want. Like, here's the iPad or here's the toy or whatever, and just stop. Like, it's not giving up like that. It truly is loving grace. Like, he's happy to do it. He is so happy that you're here in the fight, and I am happy to hold your hand and pull you through. So this is like, it's helping us without making us feel guilty. It's supporting us without making us feel lesser than or beggars. And it's something that Maharaj lived physically. In his own lifetime, when there was a massive drought, as we all know, under the colonial period and the other rules in India, many times there were man-made famines, right? Where either through taxation or global warfare and the colonial teams, outside of just weather issues, and sometimes there were weather issues, there were these famines that would happen. And Agnotero Card is a famous one in Shriji Maharaj's time. And in that time, when there's famine coming on, Bhagwan Swaminarayan makes it a point to help the people across Gujarat, which was kind of his area of influence at that time. His name was known all the way till Kolkata and also in terms of Maharashtra, but his active kind of place of work was in Gujarat. And in Gujarat during this famine, he would do things like have his devotees deliver food to the rich people of Gadhada in the dead of night. So nobody would see that the rich person too was starving. And they would put the food at their doorstep and walk away, so nobody would be able to say who gave him the food. In Kutch, he hid himself and disguised himself as a beggar. Right? God himself dressed as a beggar so he could go around and do a recce of what the situation was and then send supplies accordingly in the dead of night so nobody realizes that they're being helped. That level of care in his physical service is what you see here in his spiritual service. I am joyously telling you here, I'm on your side. I'm here to help you. And you don't need to feel bad that you don't live up to my level. Right?
I think it is like announcing a winner.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But let me add a question if I can.
Yeah.
So the key point out of those 6 for me is as long as you stay in the fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And if I'm totally honest, through my satsang journey, I've sort of been super in the fight, super I'm just out the back door. And now I've become carefree for wrong reasons, probably.
Okay.
Now, this is a question initially raised by Kakabhai. in his day and age, with all due respect, he probably didn't have the same level of responsibilities, the amount of information hitting us, the decision fatigue that we all go through. So, you know, the rat race that we have right now is incessant, if I'm totally honest. You know, from the moment you wake up, you don't have time to do your puja properly. And I know people always say, well, you can make time, wake up 5 minutes early or whatnot. Whether we can or can't, that's an individual question that we all need to introspect on and make a decision on. But most people are really, really busy. I know when I get home after work, I don't want to interact because I've had such a busy day. I'd rather just go to my man cave and play on my PS5 or whatnot and just completely just switch off. The last thing I want to start thinking about is being in the battle, being conscious, coming home and doing the arti and doing a Vachanamrut reading, which I know fundamentally is important for me. That's the words of the Sant ultimately coming through and inspiring me, but I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So how does someone in this day and age continue to live their very, very busy worldly life, yet still remain in the fight?
Yeah. Okay, well, do you mind if I step back a couple of steps?
Yeah,
before you go
please.
straight there? So I think because one of the answers is to realize what's at risk and what we lose if we don't do this carefully. So, you know, one thing that maybe you can fill in actually more than I can is when we look around the world and we see people who have generational security of means, right? And I'm not talking simply in an economic format. This is not about, let's say, somebody who's had 10 generations of wealth alone. Sometimes I'm using the word security very consciously. That sometimes it can be generationally living in a family that does not value money, but is always there for you if you do not succeed at some random thing you've done. Okay? And maybe you have some examples of this you can fill in a bit later. But what you see is people who start from a position of security are able to greater things because they're able to digest greater risk. So I'm speaking in a very worldly way right now. Like the people who jump out of planes and jump off of mountains and do the hardest ski slopes and you know crush the biggest waves are hardly ever people who do not have some sort of security blanket or stability and confidence that is allowing them to take those efforts to grow. And so for me, what is at risk is that security. What Bhagwan Swaminarayan is putting forth here is, if you commit to making conscious choices, despite the effort they take, you will see that there is a security blanket from me that is available to you. Something that will allow you to live with strength, that will allow you to take on the world from a position of confidence and not insecurity, and allow you to do things even greater than what you can imagine today, because half of your energy is going into a fight that it doesn't need to go into. So I think if we understand that first, then your motivations start to redefine. When you see what's being offered, Bhagwan Swaminarayan is putting forth, and actually this part that I skipped is he's using actually this is not just Bhagwan Swaminarayan saying it, he's saying it across millennia, right? He's using the example from the Gita where Krishna Bhagavan tells Arjun is losing, like, you're talking about responsibility. This guy's got the responsibility of a continent lying on his shoulder. And he is giving up. He is done. And Krishna Bhagavan is telling him, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra
Shri Vijayur Bhuti
Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Wherever I am there, wherever you are there, only there is their victory, is their wisdom, is their righteousness. He uses that example to say, if you think you are facing the world the same way that Arjun is facing the world, don't forget, I got your back. Go face the world. Start from a position of strength and security, Don't start from a position of insecurity trying to fill a void. Fill your glass full and then go hunt. Go fill the tank and then go hunt. And I think these sorts of things, when we realize that that is what's being offered to us, that there is somebody who is willing to give us love beyond love without any expectations. You can today lose every penny you have, lose every friend you have. You can move to a remote country in the world where your social structure is completely starting from scratch. And you guys have done it. And yet you will know that Bhagwan Swami Maharaj is with you. That Maharaj is with you. And for somebody else, it might be a different spiritual system. But it's that system that's with you wherever you go. That's what Maharaj is offering. I think that motivation first, it kind of helps us realize what's at stake, and then we can, do the physical. So I think that's step one. Step two to that.
I would just
go
like
ahead.
to add a prasang of Pramukh Swami Maharaj here, which is one of my favorite prasangs of Pramukh Swami Maharaj as far as this security is concerned. Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he was in Africa, and it was some welcoming ceremony, Swagat Sabha of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. And then Pramukh Swami Maharaj in his Ashirwad, he said that he quoted a prasang from Bhagavad, that there is a narration in Bhagavad that when this Jeev was in his mother's womb, at that time he prayed to God that please free me from this misery, from this dukh. And then upon being freed, I'll devote myself to you. I'll do your bhakti. So please free me from this dukh. I can't suffer this anymore. At that time, God tells the Jeev that you've been telling this me always. Whenever I free you from this misery, you take birth and you never do devotion. You're never committed to me. You just go by yourself. So this is the time I'm going to punish you. I won't set you free. And then God tells the Jeev that if someone bails you out, I'll set you free. Pramukh Swami Maharaj told that at that time, Sant is the one who bails the Jeev out. Sant tells God that please free him from this misery. I take the responsibility that I'll make him do your bhajan. And that time Pramukh Swami Maharaj told the audience sitting there, Ame tamara jamin thaya chiye. I am the one, we are the one who have bailed you guys out. And then he told, when you were in India, Shastri Maharaj, because he bailed you out, he made you do satsang. From India, you guys moved to Africa. Yogiji Maharaj, he followed you to Africa and made you do satsang there. From Africa, you people moved to London. Yogiji Maharaj followed you to London and made you do satsang. From London, you went to America. So we came behind you to America and made you do satsang. And now's the climax. Pramukh Swami Maharaj told that now even if you go to moon, we'll come after you to moon, we'll follow you to the moon, but won't leave you alone. We are the one who will make you do satsang. So who in the world gives this kind of a security?
I completely can't agree more on this point.
So this is, the safety net, the Satpurush always there for you. So you are the winner. As you said, the winner is declared. And as you say that, the safety that we can even not just pursue our spiritual path, but we can even live peacefully. We can sleep peacefully in the night. The reason is we always have Satpurush at our back.
Shriji Maharaj is Vardhan, right? Like this blanket. Shriji Maharaj tells Ramanan Swami on the day that he becomes the head of the faith, right? He tells Ramanan Swami, I don't want anything else, I want two things. Your devotee should never suffer from the lack of food, clothing, or shelter, right? Let me suffer in his place, but don't let him suffer. And the second one, if he's going to feel pain of the bite of a scorpion, let me feel it manifold in every pore of my body, but save him. That sort of love that says, when we say, I got you, what more? Go out there. Go do the things you need to do to succeed in this life because I got you. And I don't have you 200 years ago. I don't have you 500 years ago. I don't have you 2,000 years ago. I don't have you 10,000 years ago. I have you today. I mean, if we continue what Bapa said in Africa, Tame bada Australia gaya. And Mahant Swami is now in Australia.
Yes.
And like satsang finds you in all of those places. But it's not just that satsang finds you. This is like the point. The point is in your heart. If we all ask ourselves, this is the one static position. You are always insecure in your other relationships. Or I don't want to make a general statement. That's too generalized. But I feel that in many cases, even in our closest relationships, there's a 1% or 5% bit of insecurity that if I cross this line, it'll be a line too far. If I cross this action or if I say this thing wrong, I'm gonna like my best friend is there, but if I do this, he may not be my friend.
There is a condition.
If you look at God and the Sant, and I'm not saying this any fantastic spiritual way. I'm in a very physical way. Anybody who's ever written a letter to Bhagwan Swami Maharaj and said, I am flawed, what's the response you get? Right? Like, there's no line that you can cross. There's no line you can cross. And I think that is that's the security blanket I'm talking about. That you know in your heart that this is one being. And if we're not spiritually enlightened yet, this is one human being. If you don't understand as Akshar Brahm, you don't understand the eternity of everything. If you understand as a human being, this is one being who just doesn't let go. Doesn't let go. And I think that is the security that you get if we do this. And so then your question is, okay, so great, we want to do it. It's fantastic. And, we all want to kind of walk this path. But then how do we do it? So your question is, how do we do it? And what I'm thinking and proposing is I want to take seriously what you said, because I think it's absolutely true. Kakabhai in his time maybe made 50 decisions or 100 decisions a day. Today, people are making 500 or 1,000 decisions a day. Now, how many of them are significant is open to question, right? But like, you can take micro decisions on every app, like whether you press a heart or not, or whether you do a share or not, or whether you scroll twice or not is a decision. And all these micro decisions, they add up. And you feel like you said, I think, what would you call it? Decision fatigue. Like there's so much to do. So I think there's a number of things that we can do. And I think I'll put them in my head. I think I've come up with like 4 categories of it. The first of it is, you said very correctly, life is at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I think the first thing we have to do is destigmatize caring for yourself and taking the 900,000 miles per hour route instead of the 1,000,000 mile per hour, right? Like, I'm not saying you need to go from 1,000,000 to 0. And what's really cool is Bhagwan Swaminarayan doesn't say that. He doesn't believe in the lack of karma. Krishna Bhagwan tells Arjun, don't tell me you're not going to fight. Because if you don't fight here, you're going to go hunting and do hinsa in the jungle. So don't tell me that you are trying to get to, absolute non-violent, this, that. Like, you are a Kshatriya, you have certain duties, you will fight. But here, fight for the right cause. Similarly, Bhagwan Swaminarayan never tells us to become zero karma. So you don't need to go from 1,000,000 miles an hour to 0. But you should not feel stigma if you have 2 careers and 2 career choices, and both of them give you a salary that keeps your family comfortable, but one of them allows you to go at 950,000 miles an hour versus 1,000,000 miles an hour. Don't feel stigmatized if you take the 950. Like, make the active decision to take choices that allow you to feel holistic happiness and not just singular vector happiness. So that's number 1. Number 2, I think, is make sure that we take the important decisions and give them a sense of schedule and routine. So you gave a great example. Like, if when you get home and then we want to do arti, or have to read the Vachanamrut, and you have to say cheshta, and you have to do thad, and all these bhakti sambandhi kriyas, and each one of those things feels like it takes an effort and a decision. Okay, like which thad to sing, and all these things. And so what you can do there is 2 things. One is to make it a routine and a schedule. And the second is to, I'm taking it as a subpart, is to diversify the load a little bit. So if for example, every day it's 7 o'clock and it's arti. And the Sanstha kind of helps, like organized religion has its benefits. The Sanstha helps by saying, look, the audio is pre-recorded.
Yeah.
The thad is pre-recorded. You just need to play it, right? So it helps by giving us these toolkits. But the second thing is if you make it a schedule and a routine, then it's not something you have to keep thinking and choosing. It's already chosen. It's cemented into your schedule. And the second part is diversity of responsibility. So if, for example, you know these are the 3 things you do, then one person in the household can be in charge of the arti, and the other person's in charge of the thad, and the other person's in charge of the ghar sabha, or reading the scripture every day. So that each person is doing one thing as opposed to each person feeling stressed about all 3 things. And so one person can take the leadership and everybody kind of benefits. So kind of spreading the decisions so you don't get decision burnout. The next thing I would say also is to make an active choice to minimize unimportant decisions. What the tech bros do today, right? Like single color shirt, single color pant, they've got 5 of each and that's their week. They're not worried about what matches with what and how, and which pair of shoes and which laces to put on, and there's a whole bunch of other people who may not have the same amount of success, and they're spending their entire savings buying 4 pairs of laces to go on the same white shoe so that they can match it to 4 different pairs of jeans, right? Like those are 2 lifestyle choices, and one person is choosing to use their decision-making energy for productive decisions and not get distracted with minor decisions. So things like that, having some sort of simplicity of attire, having some sort of simplicity of food, so that there's not a constant battle in the household about what we make on which day, right? That takes away a lot of stress from the family, a lot of decision making. Having simplicity, like in your phone, are there apps that are sucking up your time and your decisions per day? Like if you imagine that you had if you had a currency, a bank account of decisions, like which app is sucking out 300 micro decisions that doesn't need to? Like, if there's an app that's making me do 300 things in 2 hours, toss the app away, right? Like, don't put it on your phone, delete it. Desubscribe, unsubscribe from things. Uninstall apps, do those sorts of things. And it's okay if you slip up and maybe add them back in a couple weeks, and then a week later you decide again, it's a cycle, no problem. But at least you're making the effort of having those conscious moments of stepping away from that, because that will bring the number of decisions down to focus. But if we want to focus on one takeaway from today, because there's still probably 100 things we could talk about, is do first things first. Do first things first. So if you know you're going to get decision fatigue, if you know there's 5,000 decisions you need to make in a day, let's do the important 5 things first thing in the morning. They'll set the right pace for the rest of the day, and then we won't have an excuse for not doing them later. And interestingly, when we look around the world today, we see kind of the repackaging of the spiritual wisdom that's always been taught to us. Yeah. And it's stuff that I have been told to do. I still don't do very well. You have to do the 5 mansis at certain times. You do the 5 artis, you do this, you do that. And it's all been told to us to do it this way. Puja Atma Swami and other Vadil Santos teach us about Sankhya Vichar, Atma Vichar, Mahimano Vichar, Praptino Vichar, Rajapano Vichar, Sabandho Mahima, these 6 thoughts that we're supposed to have. And all of this is told to us, it's taught to us, they've systemized it, and we're just kind of like, whatever. But the thing is, you now look out into the world and you see the same things packaged under science and well-being, and everyone's doing it.
Exactly.
Today, research is showing, if you start off in your morning with meditation, dopamine, serotonin go up. Cortisol response, first 45 minutes of your day, your body starts ramping up cortisol so that you can manage the activities and the stress that's bound to come to you throughout the day, right? Specifically because our bodies are still made for cavemen, right? We've conjured a world now with technology that is much more comfortable, but our biochemistry is still very much animalistic. So our body accepts that as soon as we wake up, we're gonna have to run. Like something's gonna be chasing us, or we're gonna have to go hunting because we're gonna be starving and thirsty. We're gonna have to go find a river to drink from. So we're like, boom. So cortisol first 45 minutes necessarily spikes. But if there's no way of mitigating that to the reality of where we are today, it can spike unhealthily and then you're stressed. Meditation, proven, practiced by Aetna Insurance and these guys in their workplaces, first thing in the morning takes that cortisol spike and just kind of mellows it out. Research telling us prefrontal cortex doesn't wake up right away in the morning. You live much more animalistically. But if you want to wake it up and you want to activate it, if you want to increase its mass and thickness, meditate in the morning. These are all things that psychologists, sociologists, workplace health people they're now preaching and teaching. And so then it makes you think like, oh yeah, maybe, satsang wasn't so wrong. Maybe first thing in the morning, I should do these 3 things. And so if we address that, what I want all of your help to kind of do is, I want to propose kind of 3 things, right? That first thing in the morning, even if it's right in bed, when we were little kids, they used to tell us, like, first thing in the morning, you should think of Maharaj or Swami in the morning for a few minutes. But to help give it some structure, what I would say is like, step 1, if you want, in the morning, and many of us do this as taught by our gurus in our puja, is to start with affirmation and alignment, right? Make sure that we are reminding ourselves of our true reality first thing in the morning. And if we take that in a physical sense, I think that means things like, reminding yourself of what matters to you and what doesn't. If I think in a very, very satsang sense even, it's just reaffirming truth, right? That you being awake is a blessing, that you have a great day ahead of you, that you have a situation that is very important to you that you want to address, or whatever you have. In satsang terms, I think it adds a lot of meaning when you say, align yourself to your core reality, which is, I am Satchidanand Atma. I am definitionally happy. I am eternal. Like, I start the day happy and I can only work my way down. Like, I'm not filling a void. I'm starting full. Like, that reaffirmation and that alignment with truth of saying that the rest of this world, Sankhya Vichar, that the rest of this world is temporary. My body is temporary. My mind and my thoughts will also waver. I don't believe the same thing today that I believed when I was 6 years old. Like, my ideas can also change. They come and they die. The one thing that doesn't is my consciousness. My Atma is true. That is reality. That affirmation of reality, we call Atma Vichar and Sankhya Vichar. In English, it's just this affirmation that I am happy. I choose to be happy. I'm starting my day happy. And that I am eternal and I am full. And I can only go down from the morning. I cannot go up. So my job is now to protect myself in the day, right? Second thing,
I would like to add one thing here. So I think that's the reason why Bhagwan Swami Maharaj told that when we start our puja, we should recite in a way that we could hear ourselves, that Aksharam Aham Purushottam Dasosmi.
Yes.
This is exactly what Bhagwan Swami Maharaj has told us to do, start our day with, that I am Akshar and I am the Das of Purushottam. Yeah. So that's exactly the thing that you are telling, the reaffirming the truth. My true form is Akshar, and my true form is I am Das of Purushottam.
If you reaffirm your true identity, then you don't spend the rest of your day fighting over adjectives, right? Like, so much of our mental space is completely distracted by fighting over and being insecure about adjectives. I'm fat, I'm skinny. I have hair, I don't have hair. I'm beautiful, I'm ugly. All of these adjectives apply to a physical reality that is not permanent and is not our reality. The reality is, I'm a soul. I am Atma. Aksharam Purushottam Dasosmi. If I reaffirm that reality, then I save myself the trouble that comes from the ignorance of adjectives, right?
Do you know what I've found? And I think as satsangis, we probably take it for granted because we have been taught all of this, and we take it mechanically.
Yeah.
To do Vairagya, to have this consciousness and do mansi and meditation. And yet, ironically, when you look at people outside of the satsang world, they've taken all of this wisdom that we've been given from the Shastras or from Sanatana Dharma, and they're applying it. And I find it quite ironic that I read leadership books or I read certain books and I'll see examples of individuals who are now using this but have repackaged it with a particular form of names. Yeah. Mindfulness in this day and age, for example. It's like
which isn't negative. Like, we don't mind that they've done that.
It's nothing wrong with that.
But it's just sad that, like, people are waking up to it, but we're falling asleep.
And that's it. And that's exactly it. And I think it's important that and I think what Mahant Swami Maharaj has said is fantastic, because he's really brought it back to the fore where it's an agna, that 15 minutes. It's mad that our guru has to give us an agna that you guys just spend 15 minutes to realize how lucky you are. And so to your point, even when you're doing puja and having that mansi, that visualization. So Michael Phelps is an example that I read once, that he's probably most commonly known as the greatest Olympian that's existed. but it's well documented that he suffers from depression, anxiety, and he had to actually do mindfulness. He used to use visualization techniques so that he would actually see how the race would finish. And that actually spurred him, and that motivated him, and that helped him to achieve greatness. And I think that's to the point that you're both saying, that as satsangis, that we are extremely fortunate, we're extremely lucky, and we just need to take that time out to follow what our Guru has taught us, which is to really believe in who we are, Satchit Anand, Atma, and to really focus on, just being happy and positive. And it's not a big ask. Ironically, that's the greatest irony. It's such a small task. It's not like we, back in the day, had to climb a mountain with a hand up like this and doing stuff on one leg.
Nothing.
We're being given something through his grace that we can actually follow, and then he's going to reward us afterwards.
And the funny thing is, that's why Maharaj in the Vachanamrut, Shriji Maharaj goes, Bhagwan Swaminarayan says that the biggest enemy of a aspirant is laziness.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else really that can stop you.
Absolutely.
It's only yourself. And if the cause for that, like you said, is decision kind of fatigue, just do it in the morning. Before you've made the other 1,000 decisions that tire you out, first thing in the morning, affirm your reality. For somebody who may not believe in the same philosophy that we do, right? It's just as applicable. Focusing on your breath, slowing down, and reminding yourself that your core identity, whatever you feel that is completely different from the noise outside. And that engaging the noise outside is your own choice. You can do it on your terms. And that just becomes more powerful, in my opinion, when you add the spirituality to it to say, I am the Atma. I am eternal. I am conscious. I am happy. Mahant Swami Maharaj is my real form. Like, I am as pure, as good as him. I'm as amazing. If I think he's amazing, like, all of those qualities reside within me. He is there. So that reaffirmation, step one.
So just to add one prasang here is, we can aptly quote Shivlal Sheth here. Shivlal Sheth, when he used to sit for dhyan, so what he used to do is, so once his dad told him that Shiva Tara Jevu Dhyan Mana Shikwa, teach me the way you meditate. And so, okay, fine, come on, let's meditate. The Shivlal started calling out that Botat bali gayi, apni haveli bali gayi, our mansion is burned out, and the Botat city is burned out. And now you are sitting on the heap of that ash, and now you are meditating. So that's what he used to do, is he used to come back to himself, that I am not this mansion, or I am not this Botat Gam, or I am not my wealth, or I am not even my body.
And he never lit the match to actually burn anything.
Yes.
But it was mentally practicing, right? That
Yes.
these things don't define me.
So here another one thing which we can discuss upon here is maybe that, but Shivlal's dad, he wasn't ready to meditate in this way. He wasn't ready to take the responsibility that I am responsible for myself. Actually, I am the source of happiness. That this Shivlal Sheth, he was seeing in front of him that this Shivlal Sheth, his own son, his own child, he is experiencing some another kind of happiness, another level of peace which I am not experiencing. And now the guy is trying to teach him, okay, do this like me, and you can achieve the same level of happiness or peace. But still,
Nope.
his dad wants to do it.
Doesn't want to do
So
it.
this is what, coming back to the words of Vachanamrut, Maharaj has mentioned about these fluctuating thoughts, which is weaker thoughts, I would say. And when we practice in a daily life, I'll share my own experience, right? That we are so weak that the first thing in the morning, our mind starts running and starts planning the day. So we are pressing the pedal for the medal at very early hours of the day, and the biggest distractor, I would say, during that active hours is our mobile, and we cannot get rid of it because we give we always take excuse in keeping mobile with us that no, I need to set an alarm, but then you end up opening your emails first, and then the couple of emails from your boss or from some stressful moments, and then your entire day gone wrong.
Invest the $20 it takes to buy an alarm. And charge your phone in a different room.
Different room. Keep
Yeah.
it aside. The small habit. So I think we need to form a habit, and we need to realize here that if we want to, like Shivlal's dad, he wanted to, but he could not have that courage to burn out everything. So the difference is there only, that wish and action. So if we really feel that yes, we want to energize ourselves with the positivity, affirmations, praptino vichar in the morning, we need to start forming the habit. We need to take it like, we need to form bring it into our hygiene. And once it is in the hygiene, in the morning hours, we identify distractor, keep away those distractors, and focus and make it as a habit. Then I think it will start giving us the fruits of it.
When you're saying putting it in the hygiene, you mean like doing it while you're showering and brushing, and it's like part of your normal daily
normal routine.
Normal
Like
routine.
I'll give you an example of Mahatma Gandhi, right? That when he could memorize entire Bhagavad Gita while brushing his teeth on a routine days. During the day, he was of course occupied, busy, but he found that time. But there was a wish to memorize. So if we want to achieve, we want to make our morning powerful, I think that's where we need to identify those distractors, keep them aside, and identify such routines where we can, develop some positive habits.
That could be the reason that Gadhada Swami, when he used to do Kathavarta in the morning before assigning the sevas, he won't assign the seva before the Kathavarta. He would change the seva of all the santos and devotees sitting there in the sabha. He would change it regularly, everyday basis. But first, he would do the Kathavarta. So no one would think that, okay, this is my seva today, what should I be planning? Nothing. Listen to the Kathavarta, be focused here, stay here, and then he'll assign the seva. So today you are supposed to do the construction, you go to the kitchen, you go to Gaushala, you do this, that. Only after the Kathavarta is done.
When I think about life in general and how people perhaps follow their day-to-day routine and eventually ambitions, we've seen so many people try to, attach happiness to wealth and material being, and that's why everyone sort of hankers after it and they don't think about anything else. And we're all, I guess, victims of our experience to some extent, but then we're also...
and surroundings, yeah.
And we're also the benefits of our experiences. And so your experience dictates how you behave. I've spent time, and I'm sure lots of other people have become focused on their own personal investments. But it's amazing how you acquire wealth and you acquire physical things, and then it burdens you. And so, what was interesting, I watched CNBC last week, and there was a small program on there which was entitled My Mini House. And it was the idea of a lot of people now who are moving away from, we've all heard about minimalism, but people actually consciously making the effort of living in smaller houses, smaller spaces, so they don't need to be burdened by all these attachments and these different items that they have. And by having a smaller house, it's forced them to have intentional thinking. And I think that's something that we all lack. And that's something I'm really trying to think about. How can I make my actions on a day-to-day basis with the strength of satsang to make it more intentional? And so to that point as well, it's really important having these guideposts in the morning of really thinking about your prapti, because you have that prapti, it gives you that right perspective. If you have the right perspective, then you'll be much more firmer in intent.
And so that's what we're talking about, the morning routine. Step one is this affirmation. Step one is to say, I am a soul and I'm a living being that is not defined by these externalities. All of these things are modulations within the strings of existence, and I am separate from that. And I am intrinsically happy, and my happiness is my own. You can say those things without believing in any of the philosophy we're talking about. But if you add to that the spirituality that we're talking about, which is to say that God and the Sant reside within me, and everything He is and everything He has is with me. That affirmation and realignment of reality in the morning, Atma Vichar, Sankhya Vichar, is something that helps you get aligned for the day. Step one. Step two, to me, is banking love. And for a person who may not believe in the same philosophies that we believe in, banking love to me is remembering all the people and all the incidents where you have felt love in your life. And everybody's had at least a couple, right? However small they may be, however large they may be, bank that love every morning. something special your spouse did for you, something special your children did for you, something special your friends did for you, something your parents did a long time ago that you didn't appreciate then, but you appreciate now because you have perspective that you didn't then. All of those things, bank them every morning. Just think of a couple. In our satsang language, we call that smruti. To think of all the moments where the Satpurush reached out, where he gave you his hand when you least expected it. Like, when I sit down and think about, like I said, I'm lucky. I've been blessed. Like, from the moment that I was, born till the moment of today, there's been so many moments where Swami's just kind of reached out, right? In my weakest moments, and this is actually kind of comedy, so I'll be open about it. But like in one of my weaker moments where I really felt bad about myself, I went to Mahant so much to talk to him. And he heard everything. And you kind of expect judgment, and because it's like religion, right, wrong. If you're wrong, you do this to make up for it. And then, there's a whole process. So you kind of expect that from your guru, right? Like, he's the disciplinarian, like he should be keeping me straight. So you go to him and you tell him all these things, you're expecting some like discipline or something. And of course, you will get that in some other kind of way. But in that moment, his answer to me was, have you ever been in a New York cab? I said, yeah. He goes, when you sit in a cab and you're stuck in traffic, the wheels don't turn, but the meter is on. Such a down-to-earth example that made me, I was in tears, but I started cracking up. That Bhagwan Swami Maharaj, right, is talking to me about a New York cab. And what is he saying? He's saying, look, buddy, even if you don't think you're progressing, the wheels aren't turning. God's meter is running. He knows the clock is on. The fight is on.
Keep fighting.
Keep the fight. You're okay. Banking on love is remembering each of us will have some story that we either heard or that's happened to us or, something we've read. You bank on that love every morning. I got energy now. You have the energy in the morning. So I am this. Step 1, reaffirmation, realignment. Step 2, bank on love. Bank all the love you can. In a worldly way, with all the family and friends you have. In a spiritual way, on top of that, the source of that, which is God and the Son. And then the third one is gratitude. That if I am this, and if I have all of this, man, I am grateful. And I really think that what Mahant Swami is saying, and Prapti Novichar, you mentioned it earlier, is tied to this idea of gratitude. Like, we can think of God's greatness, we can think of the Son's greatness, but the gratitude is, I am blessed to have him. Like, talking about, that statement, 2 birds in a bush versus 1 in the hand. The 1 in the hand is better than 2 in the bush. It's that sort of thing. Prapti Novichar is identifying the fact that it's in your hand. You're not talking about these 2 birds that are beautiful and singing on a tree. You're talking about the one that's in your hand. It's here. And that level of gratitude, again, in a non-religious way, in a non-spiritual way, it applies just as well, counting all the things that have gone right. There was a young person who came up to me just last week, and we're having this conversation about how he felt less than, and he felt like he wasn't making it, and he felt he wasn't doing good enough, and all these things. And I said, look, man, it's good for you to have dreams, and it's good for you to want to do more. And I'm happy that you are recognizing some things you can improve. I said, do you realize you've probably spent more on clothing than your father did in his entire life? Like, you are not in some backwards level of poverty. You have brought your family forward. You have moved economically forward. It may not match up to the latest Instagram trend that you've got stuck in your head, but you're not bad. Count your blessings, right? And when you start doing that, that gratitude sets your day on the right foot. Because like I said, now you start from strength and you don't start from insecurity. In the spiritual sense, it's counting the Satpurush's moments in your life and being grateful for satsang, being grateful for life, being grateful for his prapti, and being grateful for having a constant that will not leave you. We talked about that earlier, that it's the one constant that does not leave. If we start every morning with these 3 things, then to what Darshan Bhai was saying earlier, you don't start, hitting the pedal to the floor on an empty tank. Because usually that's what we do. Instead, now you can take whatever happens in your day, starting from a position of confidence, of security, of high energy, And on top of that, with, as we were talking about earlier with the biology, greater dopamine, serotonin, less cortisol, and all the biological and neurological, benefits that come with it. So I think, look, there's a lot here that we can talk about, but if we take the essence of this Vachanamrut, I think it comes to saying, let us be carefree. Not careless, but carefree. Let us have the strength and confidence that comes from, knowing that God is on our side. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna. Wherever God is with us. Victory is ours. All I have to do is stay in the fight. Because fighting is winning. And the results otherwise don't matter. So I really, really appreciate all of your time. Really appreciate the conversation we've had. And I hope we can continue this, to help each other progress. Thanks again, all of you, for making the time. Jai Swaminarayan.